Hi, I'm Anastasia Jaegerman. Welcome to the Optimum Tide. Today, I have Andy Kramer joining us, and we will be discussing the ACORD Standard Life application. Little bio on Andy. Andy holds a bachelor's degree, a Bachelor of Science in St. John University in Minnesota, and an MBA degree at the University of Missouri in Kansas City in Operations Management. He's got 30 plus years in experience in our insurance industry, 11 years in reinsurance experience, about 10 plus years experience in the bank assurance, and another 10 some odd years into the direct life insurance company. He holds a Six Sigma Black Belt, a Master Black Belt certification. And I'm really pleased he joined us today and flew down this morning from Florida. And we are in Dallas, Texas. So welcome, Andy. And tell us a little bit about the ACORD standard and how you got involved in this massive project.
Okay, thank you, Anastasia. I'm glad to be here. When I started at M Financial, my boss was on the board of directors at ACORD. He was an old P&C guy, and the property and casualty industry in the London market were quick adopters of the ACORD standards in everything they do, and they're yielding tremendous efficiencies because of it. And so he asked me to learn about everything I could about what ACORD offers and all the advantages to M Financial and to our industry, and identify opportunities to improve our industry. So with that, I identified the fact that we could use a standard application. We had one in 2004 that ACORD created, but nobody implemented it. But we thought, now that we've gone digital as an industry, now is the time to do that. Because in the old days, it was, this is our paper app, take it or leave it. And when they created it, it was a pretty lengthy document. This time around, we've been working with the Interstate Insurance Compact. They have agreed that a carrier does not need to use all of the questions that we have on the application. If you see a question that you don't think adds value in your market, you can pull that question out. So you don't have to implement the whole thing as it stands. So I think that's a big win. And we've also built in some flexibility, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then I also did some work, where I launched two projects focusing on the electronic health records data standards for ACORD.
Now tell me, you've been working, would you say that that COVID was a catalyst into making us think differently? Because when it happened, I'll ask you a two-pronged question. How long have you been working on this project? And what are the pain points that you see in the life insurance sales and the underwriting process with this relating to this?
Yeah. So I've been working on this project. We originally conceived of the projects in the late 2000 timeframe, and we launched the projects in 2001. And we've been working on them since that time. We've had the application essentially completed for about 8 months now, and we're working with the Interstate Insurance Compact.
You mean 2021?
2021 is when we started.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Okay. That I was just checking.
Yep. And we've now, we've had the application completed since late 2023, and now we're working with the Interstate Insurance Compact to finalize their approval of the application and for them to build out a process to handle this, because one of the values or the benefits of this application for a carrier is it'll shorten the forms approval time. The Interstate Insurance Compact wants this to be a success because it'll greatly simplify their forms approval. And so they really want it to be a success. So they want to build out a more expedited approval process for carriers that use this application. Instead of it taking weeks in the old process, they want to get it down to a matter of a day or two. So the pain points that this application was initially conceived to address is, as you know, M Financial is involved we're a distributor in the high net worth and ultra high net worth marketplace. And when our producers sell large amounts of coverage to high net worth and ultra high net worth clients, they generally like to diversify the coverage so that, we've seen a lot of carriers in the last 40 years go out of business, and when that happens, their books of business generally get sold to a runoff company of some kind or another company that basically cranks down the credited interest rates on those policies and increases the cost of insurance. And that can really cause problems with somebody's long-term financial plan when you talk about the size of policies that we sell. So they like to diversify the coverage to minimize the risk to the financial plan if one carrier goes out of business. Now, when you sell 3 policies to one client, they have to complete 3 applications, and that's where it really gets challenging. It takes 40 to 60 minutes to complete one application. And then the way our guys do it, they generally have their back office staff read the medical records, complete the application on behalf of the client, then review it with the client to have them sign it. But before we actually bring it to the client, we do a lot of proofreading to make sure that we didn't transpose dates of birth or social security number and we got all the health questions correct. Because the last thing we want to do is create a situation where a policy would be contested at claim time in the first 2 years if we had a clerical error right up front. So the actual completion of the application and the proofreading takes hours per application. And the reason that I was looking at this as a process improvement is so that our member firm staff can spend more time writing new business than trying to get multiple applications pushed over the finish line. But also the clients, it's a very tedious process for the clients. If you think about doing even electronic application, whether it be on iPipeline or whichever application, it takes about 40 minutes for the client to complete that information. But I know with our underwriters, when they do the field underwriting, they have the client complete an intake form, which asks the same Part 2 questions. So there's a lot of redundancy. If you think about all the times a producer writes the client's name or types the client's name throughout the entire process from their first point of contact to delivery of the death claim, multiple years down the road, there's a lot of redundancy in that process. And I'm just trying to reduce some of that redundancy and make the process more streamlined.
Well, that makes sense. Like from the producers and the client standpoint of view, like the pain point, I could completely see and I'll bet you many underwriters don't believe that it takes 40 to 60 minutes to complete an application, but that's good information you're providing us. But how do you address these issues? How do you reconcile everything you just said with the pain points? How do you manage that?
Yeah, the reason that I did this is so that we could try to get to a situation where we could just key the information once and use it many times. Let's capture it once. So I mentioned that our producers use an intake form where they actually capture the medical history. So let's have that captured once on a system so that we could then send that out to each of the carriers instead of sending that paper application. Or you could create the application, then quickly, easily get it signed and transmit that in. But I would assume the carriers would want to use that data so they don't have to rekey it or use OCR or whatever to extract the information off that application.
Makes sense. So when you talk about the standard application, what other principle does it address? Like, what's the advantage to the carrier to do something like to sign up for something like that? How would they benefit?
Why should they spend the money to create this
exactly.
application?
Yeah, come out and say that. Yeah.
A minor benefit would be one that I've already mentioned, which would be shortening the forms approval time. It does. Yes. It takes a minimum of weeks to get the forms approved. And I know of one carrier that I've been working with that's now in probably the 16th month to get their forms approved. Now, they had some challenges with staffing and things like that, but it isn't a trivial process to get the forms approved. So that's one benefit. But the other one would be the system's implementation costs and maintenance. I had one of the vendors for the enrollment systems commented that if carriers would implement the standard application, it could potentially reduce their implementation costs by up to 80%, because 80% of the effort on setting up a new application is the mapping of the fields.
Right.
So if you've already got the fields identified, the questions identified, the fields defined in the ACORD data standards, it's just a matter of mapping those ACORD standard fields to their system.
Seems like it would be a reinsurer's dream, but I can only speak for my own opinion because having reviewed many, many applications, and you've probably heard it from many carriers because I know you talk to many direct carriers, like how will they spend so much time and energy improving their application and designing their own question. And some considered it a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
They're like, no, my application is better than yours. And how do you, what's your response to this? What do you tell the folks when they say that to you?
First thing, I do recognize that carriers have spent a lot of time and money improving their applications over the last 5 years. Because I just think about the application changes I've seen since I've been at M 4+ years ago. Everybody is moving toward the same basic end state. They're getting away from the open-ended questions. Do you have any one of these impairments? If yes, provide details below. Right. Because that's not structured data. Everybody's migrating toward a structured data approach. Do you have a heart condition? If yes, check the one that applies to you or the ones that apply to you. Coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure, valvular heart problems, whatever. That way you've got the structured data. And I see other a lot of carriers are
like
also...
a hospital form.
Like a hospital form, yeah. Okay. So it can be easily created in a structured format that can be then analyzed by a rules engine or decision engine of some kind to determine which underwriting path to send it down. But I also have recognized that they've spent a lot of time and money on more of the behavioral sciences, how to structure the question to get the most truthful answer.
That I'm fascinated with.
Yeah, and we've done things like that in our form, and we'll show some examples in a little bit. Like in our tobacco use form, we've made kind of a little table to capture what type of nicotine are you using, how frequently are you using it, and stuff like that, to be much more specific, and to hopefully elucidate better answers from people.
And the tobacco question is not a sticky one, but you hear it often right now because they're doing a lot of mortality studies about tobacco and when you discontinue smoking, what's the advantages? And we thought in the past that, after 12 months, you were kind of out in the clear, and after 2 years, oh my God, it was great. But data doesn't quite show that. So I'm fascinated by the way you ask questions about the application. So do we have examples? We have examples there. So tell me more about this application.
Yeah.
I want to know more.
So we recognize that one of the main impediments to the adoption would be if we did not build in some type of flexibility, because we realize that not every carrier uses the same definition of a smoker. Correct. So some of them use a different look-back period. So in our application question 8A, we've enabled four different use or look-back periods. We said, have you ever used tobacco, or have you used it in the last 12 months, the last 24 months, or the last 36 months? And we've got them bracketed on that question, and we've got approval from the Interstate Insurance Compact that when you have bracketed questions like this, you can pick which option you want.
Oh, okay.
So
that's interesting. So some carriers might not choose to ask such an extensive smoking question. They might just stick to a 2-year period.
That's right. Yeah, we wouldn't use, like in question 8A, you would only use one of those bracketed things. Like if you had a 12-month look-back period, you would say, have you used nicotine or tobacco or nicotine-containing products in the last 12 months? And then the question below it would be, when was the last time you've used it? Now, again, that's a bracketed question. Some carriers don't ask that, so we don't need to ask that question if you don't want to, if it's not adding value to you. But then the table on the right is one which we picked up from a couple of carriers that use it, is a way to really be specific about what type of tobacco you use and how frequently you use them.
Interesting.
Using a table format. Mm-hmm. But again, it's bracketed, so people don't need to use it. They can use whatever approach they like, and we've accommodated that in the data standards that will be coming out of this.
Okay. So what's the current status of this application, and where and what can carriers do if they want to learn more about this?
Well, they can contact me.
Okay.
Andy.Kramer@mfin.com.
Okay.
And I'll be glad to give you a deep dive into the application. One of the other reasons that I implemented or wanted to implement a project like this is so that we would get true data interoperability through the entire value stream of the life insurance industry. Right now, who gets the application? It's just the carrier, right?
Right.
And what information do the reinsurers get when they get an automatic cession? They get name, date of birth, risk class, and face amount and amount that they're being ceded, right? That's about it. What if we could append the Part 2 information? Now, the carriers could answer that question that everybody was thinking and probably muttering out loud back in 2020. What's our exposure to COVID? Now they would have an answer to that. And you could probably do away with reinsurance underwriting audits, because you would have a better view into what business is in your automatic portfolio. You wouldn't need to go out and pull 30 files and use a conference room at the carriers or whatever.
Exactly. Several light bulbs went up above my head. I don't know if you see them, but, and they're imaginary. But I was like, I don't know. You had other questions there that I wanted to just show examples, because I like the way the questions go, but also to piggyback on your comment about the reinsurer. Definitely, hands down, a reinsurer always wants to know, when I present an audit of a certain carrier and I present it to my boss, and they're like, yeah, but this is just like a sample, a very minute sample of the business they're ceding us. And if you have, you're always hoping for a good audit result. And if there's one that's not so good, then you really wonder about the excess business that they're ceding you on an automatic basis, but you have no clue of the disease process that you have on your books. You really don't. You're flying blind. And to have the ability to be able to get these data set points and to be able to look at a block of business that your carrier, your reinsuring would provide tremendous values for a reinsurer. I can only speak for us, and I'm sure my colleagues at the other reinsurance companies would validate this point also. But we have an example here on the screen, I believe, about family history.
Yep. Yeah. So we've asked the father, mother, or siblings, and then the age if living, age if death, and then any of the major medical conditions, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, cancer, and then the cause of death over on the right. So I think we felt the table view like that was the easiest and cleanest way to capture the information.
Definitely.
Now, if you think about the electronic application and serving this question up, you would probably structure the question. This is just the physical rendering of the question.
Okay.
So the way that you could structure this if you're asking the question in an electronic format is you could say, is your father alive or dead? If they're dead, what age did they die? And then what medical conditions did they have? And what was the cause of death? So, and I think that's how we structured it on our actual reflexive or question list and all the reflexive questions. And we've got an Excel spreadsheet that we use to track all this that has all of the first level questions and 5 levels of reflexive questions. Let's pull that one up and we'll show them. So you can see on the left-hand side, we have the high level question, and then each row moving from left to right goes deeper and deeper. And this shows like 4 or 5 different levels. But that's where we've got, this is a very big spreadsheet that covers all the questions that we ask. And you can actually then get ideas from that on how you would ask the question in an electronic format. And this is actually also approved by the Interstate Insurance Compact in addition to that physical rendering, the PDF. So all the reflexive questions are already completed.
Wow.
Now we did kind of constrain ourselves a little bit when we defined our reflexive questions because we wanted to have some guardrails that we were operating within when we structured it because we thought we could quickly get into some scope creep. So what we said is we don't want to ask the question if the applicant's likely not going to know the answer. So think about if the client says, yes, I had prostate cancer, are you going to ask them tumor stage and grade? What was your Gleason score? Probably not.
No.
Because they're going to know that stage 1 is the least aggressive and the least advanced, so they're going to tell you stage 1,
right? Because
they can't remember what it is. So we didn't, and then if we're going to need an APS anyway to underwrite the risk, we're not going to ask the question. Like if somebody has coronary artery disease, you're not going to say how many vessels were occluded, or how many bypasses did you get. That's all we need to know. You had a bypass. Let's get the APS.
Right.
We stopped asking questions if it will likely end up in a decline.
Okay.
So we didn't want to put them through a negative customer experience and raise hopes if we knew that we were going to decline them.
Okay. And so this ACORD standard life application also kind of joins, so you talk about, and that will be for our next episode, but electronic health records also.
That's
so where you'll be able to extract data and kind of put it in a template form, like where you could use all the data and validate it
in an efficient way. So the high level overview or summary of the electronic health records data standards. If you think about the giant XML or JSON files that we receive with the electronic health records that contain their entire medical history, it's like we're trying to find a needle in a haystack, right? Mm-hmm. And if you to take that giant JSON or XML file and you would render it out to a PDF, it's going to be an APS that's 100 pages long. And the underwriter probably only needs about 10 of that data elements to make a decision on that case. Mm-hmm. So the electronic health records enable you to find that needle in the haystack.
Exciting. More to come, definitely. And about AI also, I think that you have a lot of views and opinions on that. That's all we hear in our industry right now, AI. So we'll talk more at our next visit. I think this was very informative. And thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to see where this goes. And I wish you well and luck in this project. I think this is phenomenal. I think it will help a lot of carriers.
Thank you, Anastasia. And if anybody wants to learn more about the standard application, feel free to contact me.
By all means. Thank you for joining us.